منشية زانيس طولي وادي حنين غرفة الوعرة السوداء طبرية ديار علس النغنغية كفر سير كراد البقارة سافية سلمى.
My name is Mike Krebs. I'm involved with a number of issues. I work with the Boycott Israeli Apartheid campaign, which is one of the groups who's organizing this event. On May 15th, 1948, is the so-called birth of the Israeli state. This happened. The birth of Israel happened. Involved the displacement of over 800,000 Palestinians from their territories. So this is why it's called Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. And this displacement, this occupation, this continues today. The numerous apartheid policies and policies of ethnic cleansing by the State of Israel against the Palestinian people. This includes the continued military occupation of the West Bank and the expansion of settlements there. It includes a genocidal siege on the people of Gaza, and the attempt to strangle and starve the people there into submission. It includes the apartheid rules within Israel, where there's different rights for people depending on their ethnicity. And it includes the continued denial of the right of return of refugees and their descendants who were driven out of Palestine in 1948 and have been driven out since then. So 60 years later, it's clear that Israel remains a settler state founded on the theft of the Palestinian land. All over the world, in Israel and outside, this is considered a 60-year birthday and is being hailed as something to celebrate. But it's clear that this is nothing that is to celebrate whatsoever. What happened in 1948 and the catastrophe that continues. May of 1948 marks the beginning of the catastrophe. It includes a displacement of over 800,000 refugees from Palestine. Right now, 60 years later, 70% of the Palestinians around the world are refugees, either outside of Palestine or internally displaced people. And 2 out of every 5 refugees worldwide are Palestinians. So when we talk about the struggle for the right of return, this is why it has to be seen as a key issue in the overall struggle for Palestine. And the first speaker, I'd like to welcome up Khalid Barakat, who's a local Palestinian activist who works with the Al-Awda Right of Return Coalition in Vancouver. So everybody, please welcome Khalid.
Thank you, Mike. We're here today to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Palestinian Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. You are part of an international movement around the world that has been commemorating this 60th anniversary in Europe, in North America, in Latin America, including in Palestine and the Arab world. So we're part of something that we're here to remind the world that Palestinians are still alive and their resistance is still alive, and that we will continue this march until liberation and self-determination and return. Today, brothers and sisters, we are here to salute the martyrs, the Palestinian, Arab and non-Arab martyrs who fell in the course of the liberation of Palestine. For the past 60 years, Palestinians have been subject to massacres, dispossession, ethnically cleansed, occupation, imprisonment, and for the past 60 years, over 200,000 Palestinians have experienced imprisonment in Israeli jails. For the past 60 years, Palestinians have been fighting for a just cause, and their resistance is a just as well, because Palestinians are not only being subjected to an Israeli brutal military racist occupation, but also what maintained this occupation is the United States of America, who's keeping this racist project alive by funding all their military and non-military projects. Today we will remember Palestinians who died passing the keys of their homes to their children. This is a right and a responsibility as well. Our responsibility as Palestinians to keep our resistance alive, and we need every support in order to continue this march for liberation and self-determination. But now, after 60 years, we see Palestinians in Iraq are being displaced again and again. An entire Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon was destroyed, and the international community was watching. This is a living Nakba for the past 60 years. And Nakba was not just an event that took place in a course of a week or two. We are living a Nakba, we are living this catastrophe for the past 60 years. This is really an important and historical event, and thank you very much. Long live Palestine.
One of the ways that the solidarity movement for Palestine has manifested in the last couple of years has been increasing calls for boycott, divestments, and sanctions, and the characterizing of Israel as an apartheid state. And this has been explicitly done to draw the link and the similarities between the system that exists in Israel and what existed in South Africa under apartheid. The newest victory in this was a recent convention of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, where they passed a resolution to support the international campaign of boycott, divestment, and sanctions until Israel recognizes the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and right to return to their homes. So this is a really important victory. So to talk about this, we've invited John Bale, who's the new National Director of KeepW for the Pacific region.
As you were just told, at our recent National Convention in mid-April, CPW passed a resolution calling for, among other things, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel until the end of the occupation of Palestine. This resolution also called for the end of suicide bombings. There was a fair amount of discussion and debating before passing this resolution. It was contentious. But Canadian Postal Worker members take our obligations for international solidarity seriously and democratically voted to become the first national union in Canada to support a campaign for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. We collectively made this decision because our union has a long history of supporting human rights. We were one of the first unions to support the boycott of South Africa, and we see huge parallels between the situation of apartheid in South Africa and with Israel's construction of the wall of occupied Palestine. We believe that Israel's occupation of Palestine is unjust and unwarranted. It defies UN resolutions and puts Palestinian workers into a difficult situation. But we know that the fight for justice has to be globalized. And that's why I'm honored to be here. And that's why I want to thank all of you for standing up for dignity and solidarity. Thank you.
End the occupation now!
End the occupation now!
End the occupation now!
End the occupation now!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Down with Israeli apartheid now!
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 End the occupation now!
End the occupation now!
End the occupation now!
End the occupation now!
Despite the occasional tactical differences between Israel and the U.S., Israel as an occupation state is still an outpost of American imperialism in the Middle East. Without the continued military, economic aid from the U.S. and the diplomatic shield that it attempts to provide through the UN, the Israel economy would collapse in a day, and the Palestinian resistance for liberation would have been victorious long ago. People outside would be less blinded by the pro-Zionist propaganda media that consistently spreads lies and misinformation about Palestine and keeps people ignorant about the real issues. And so I think it's important to remember that because of this role of Israel, the struggle of Palestine is linked to all struggles around the world against imperialism and against occupation. The occupation of Iraq, Afghanistan, are all a part of a drive by the US, Canada, and others for political and economic hegemony in the Middle East and Central Asia. And the only other thing I want to point out is that this continued occupation, this apartheid regime against Palestine, continues with the support of the Canadian government. This is a support that is only sharpened with the current Conservative minority government under Harper. I'm just going to introduce the final speakers. I'd like to introduce Martha Roth. Martha is a longtime activist, although a recent arrival to Vancouver, and is a member of Jews for a Just Peace.
I'm here as a representative from Jews for a Just Peace, which is one of the constituent groups, the Alliance of Concerned Jewish Canadians, ACJC, a countrywide group that came together at an organizing meeting in Toronto about 6 weeks ago. ACJC represents progressive Jews from all across Canada, from the Maritimes to British Columbia, who are opposed to the oppressive policies of the Israeli state, including the occupation of Palestine. 2008 does mark the 60th anniversary of the founding of the oppressive Israeli state, and also, of course, the Nakba, the disastrous displacement of 800,000 Palestinians from their land and the destruction of more than 450 villages. 2008 also marks the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So there is a lot to deplore and a little bit to celebrate about this anniversary year. Last week, Johan Hari, who is a reporter for the British paper The Independent, wrote another bit of good news. He described the shameful way in which certain pro-occupation spokespeople try to label any criticism of their policies as anti-Semitism. Are you listening, Stephen Harper? The formation of ACJC is part of a global movement among Jews and others who support the goal of Palestinian freedom. Speaking for my comrades in both JJP and ACJC, I want to say that we believe in equal justice for Palestinians and Israelis. We believe in international law. We oppose racism in all its forms. We are proud Jews, and we try to be good Jews. Proud to stand with our Palestinian brothers and sisters and to say no to the powerful voices of media and government, and to say yes to the many United Nations resolutions that have called on Israel to change its policies, and yes to the decisions of the International Court of Justice, which has termed the separation wall illegal. End the occupation now.
End the occupation now.
End the occupation now.
Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea.
End Israeli occupation now.
End Israeli occupation now.
I'd like to introduce our last speaker, Hannah Kawas. Hannah is a veteran Palestinian activist here in the Lower Mainland, who's also the chairperson of the Canada-Palestine Association and the host of the Voice of Palestine show on Co-op Radio.
From March 10th till May 15, which is hardly 2 months and a bit maybe, they made 350,000 refugees. 350,000 refugees. That's half the refugee population that happened after the date of the Nakba, 1948. So to say that the Zionists wanted to live with Palestinians, it's a big lie. To say that the Zionists were attacked and then they defended themselves, it was a big lie. To say that the Arab armies came to liberate Palestine from the Zionists is a big lie. King Abdullah had a deal with the Zionists in 1948, not to liberate it from the Zionist gang, but to liberate it from its own people and annex it to his kingdom, the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. I think the extent of it is clear now. I mean, 450 towns and villages being destroyed and wiped out of the world map is not really a small act of generosity or a small act of human rights, as the Zionists claim. It's a massive destruction of a whole nation. To ethnically cleanse 2/3 of the Palestinian people, it's unprecedented in world history. So when we stand here, we should remember all those who lost their homes, who lost their wives, their lives, who lost their properties, and lost above all their national homeland. I'd like to touch a little bit about the role of Canada in this infamy. Many people don't know that the people who drafted the partition plan on November 29th, just 6 months before the Nakba, November 29th, 1947, the people who drafted it was a Canadian. The person who drafted it and then implemented it and worked diligently to implement or to pass this resolution at the United Nations, 2 Canadians actually. One of them, the late infamous Lester Pearson, who used to be Under Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs then, and before that, by the way, he used to be the ambassador, our ambassador to the United States, and Judge Rand also. They played a major role in drafting the partition plan, and really they didn't care about the division of Palestine and establishing, you know, two nations, or to have 2 countries, one Israel and one for the Palestinian people. All they cared about is to gain a foothold for the Zionist movement in Palestine. So he played a role then, and Canada played a role also in the financing and facilitating the immigration of the Zionist immigrants to Palestine. 300 Canadians fought against Canadian law with the Zionist gangs, 300 of them. These people went and fought against Canadian law. There is the foreign enlistment law that was enacted in '39 that forbids any Canadian to fight in foreign soil. They enacted, by the way, that law in 1939, the Foreign Enlistment Act, to stop Canadian from going to fight fascism in Spain. That was the law. They wanted it to stop people from fighting against fascism, but they allowed people to go and fight, to colonize and disperse and ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people. This is the Canadian position. Also, lots of money went under the watchful eye of the Canadian government and the British government from Canada to help the immigration to Palestine. So Canada involved from day one.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free,